So, welcome back to my 15th century Italian dance channel. Today we're going to discuss a fundamental step in, well, not just 15th century dance, but dance for about 4 centuries actually. That is what is called in Italian the Doppio, or in English the double. The Doppio is described very vaguely in most sources as consisting of 3 steps, and generally 3 steps to 1 measure of music. Now you can do this Doppio, this double, at different tempi, meaning different mensurations of music. So you can do it in 4/4, 6/4, 6/8, 2/4, and it changes how it moves generally. We're going to start by talking about the Doppio in Bassa danza, which means 6/4. Now, before we actually demonstrate and practice this, I'd like to read an excerpt, one of the more detailed descriptions of the Doppio by the Italian dance master quaternaria. He writes, "Style means that you must bestow elegance, what you do by emphasizing and undulating with the body according to what foot you are moving. Thus, if you move the right in making a Doppio, you must emphasize over the left foot, which remains on the ground, by turning the body to that side, and undulate on the second short step by rising yourself gently above it, and then equally gently lower yourself on the 3rd step. That completes the Doppio." So, from that we can get several key points, and that's the 3 steps. He also notes, and he says this elsewhere, that the double consists of a long, short, long sequence. So 2 long steps and 1 short sequence, the short step coming in between the 2. Now this makes particular sense in certain tempi of music, namely in anything that's in triple. So 6/4, 6/8. Because the music naturally has a syncopated rhythm, or 1, 2, 3 in the Bassa danza, which is playing right now. Okay, so he also talks about turning the body and undulating. So let's first talk about the 3 steps. So at this tempo of music, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we've got step, 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 step. Okay, you can practice with me. So that's just your basic 3 steps. Now you'll notice there's a pause. 1, 2, 3, pause, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, this is again called Bassa danza music. The important thing to note is there's no drum. Modern listeners are accustomed to being percussed to death by drum. But in the 15th century, we rarely have examples of drumming accompanying Bassa danza music. The rhythm actually seems to have come from the music itself, what's called the tenor line, and that's the plucking. You'll hear this pluck, 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 pluck. In the case of plucked string music like this, when you have what's called a loud instrument, shawm, a hauptpfeife, something along those lines, then you'll have what I affectionately call the blare of the dying goose, which would again be a bong, 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 bong. So that's what's giving you each half measure in essence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's important to actually learn how to dance to this melody of music instead of something more obvious on a drum, for example. Okay? So, now that we've talked about rhythm basically, back to our 3 steps. Now, as you recall, Quaternaria talked about undulating gently by rising on the 1st step, reaching a height on the 2nd step, and going back to flat on the 3rd step. So that ends up looking like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's a very gentle. Okay? Nothing very dramatic. He also talks about using the music, and my music seems to be misbehaving. This shouldn't have been the next thing on the list. Set it back to Bassa danza. Okay. So, back to our nice Bassa danza music. Okay, back to the rhythm. Nice. Okay, so he also talks about turning the body, which in modern terms is typically called shoulder shading. So he talks about if you step with your right, you're actually turning your body sort of in that direction. If you step with your left, you're turning your body in that direction. Now, what's interesting is Domenico, one of the other dance masters, when they talk about shoulder shading, they talk about leading with the shoulder of the foot that's leading the double. Cornezzano seems to be implying that you can do a cross shade, which actually creates a different dynamic and a look that I like as well. So I'm going to demonstrate to you Cornezzano's cross shading on the double. Okay? So that would mean that if I'm leading with my left foot, I'm going to turn my torso to the right, or to the left, so that my right shoulder actually ends up leading that. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and then you shift, go to the other side. And he says that this should be very gentle. There shouldn't be anything dramatic about it. Now that's perhaps his personal preference of style, and you could, if you wanted, of course, make it very dramatic. And that would be your own style, and he might call that improper and all sorts of denigratory adjectives, but if that's what you prefer, then go for it. Okay. So that's the double in Bassa danza. We're now going to do some exercises together. Again, listening to the music. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plop. Plop. And we're just going to do double. And if you're feeling comfortable, try with the undulation. Up, up, down. Up, up, flat, up, up, flat, up, up, flat, up, flat, up, flat, up, flat, I'm going to walk the other way because I'm getting dizzy. If I were wearing the proper clothing, the remora in my case, and the ciapo or dornea, then this motion would create a gentle swaying in my skirts, and it would be very fetching. Okay, so that is in Bassa danza. Let's talk about the Doppio in the tempo that is called, in the misura, that is called quaternaria. Quaternaria, as the Latinate word implies, is the square tempo. It is the 4/4 of the 15th century. Okay, so instead of having this syncopated, okay, which we have because it's a triple meter, it's a double meter. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Could you change to the next one? Okay, change to the next track. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And frequently to this music you will actually have a drum. Not always, but sometimes. Here we don't actually. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now here, your steps will be evenly spread, I think, because each beat gets equal treatment. 2, 3. Again, if you like, you can lead to your shoulder shading, to the undulations. The implication generally in the sources tends to be that the speed of music defines the length of the step. Of course, as you become a more advanced dancer, you can play with that and make longer steps. More dramatic. So while we're practicing this, I want you to practice modifying find the length of your steps. Try making shorter, more delicate steps and longer steps. And alternate with that. This is also good for when you're learning to dance in a limited space. It was common in the 15th century for people to actually dance in their private quarters after the official revelry had concluded. They would retreat with their closest retainers, their cronies, their acolytes, and dance in the bedchamber. Now granted, the bedchamber in question was significantly larger than my bedchamber, but nevertheless, a more limited space than the piazza. Okay, so that's quaternaria. Now when you take the doppio and you apply it to another meter, another triple meter that is called piva, well, okay, so technically this is actually solferello tempo, it's the 6/8 tempo, but very often in the 15th century, the step known as piva ends up being danced in the solferello tempo, okay, which is a triple tempo. Again, that means we're going to have a long, short, long, but it's 6/8 instead of 6/4, so it's going to be da 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 da. Okay, and when you dance to that tempo, you're going to have a naturally chipper, bouncy step because the second step is very short when the music is this fast. Da, 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 da. So this is what happens to your double when you dance it to a lively, chipper 6/8. Dance in the other direction. Again, you can still use the shoulder shading, although it may be a little silly hooking at this tempo. I don't know, I've never watched myself. Generally, the piva is going so quickly and you're so focused on not getting run over by other people that you perhaps don't focus on the ornamentation so much. Okay, so now what I would like you to do as an exercise is practice making the second step not as short. Make it travel. Make it so that the timing is what is short, but not the length of the step. You end up with more of a running step, which can be fun also. I find the shortened step helps on the curves, and on the long straightaway, you can get more of a running step. And it could well be that the double was even at the time a very malleable step open to interpretation. So again, I want you to practice lengthening your steps and then shortening that second step. Lengthen it, shorten it, take it away, lengthen it, shorten it, lengthen it, shorten it, lengthen it. Okay, so that is the double in all of its myriad tempi. So, I hope you've enjoyed this. Happy dancing!